If you ask people who grew up in former Soviet Union what their favorite holiday was, most of them will not hesitate even for a second. It was New Year. Not because it was loud or festive or full of decoration, but because for many people it was the only night of the year that truly belonged to them. A night without politics, without pressure, without slogans. A night with New Year tree, Father Frost, and presents. Hi, this is Dr. Helen, and today I will tell you how we used to celebrate New Year in Ukraine and former Soviet Union. In this video, I will tell you about two little known but very meaningful traditions and why New Year night was so special. Please listen to the very end. So, when people today hear about holidays in former Soviet Union, they often imagine something official or ideological. But the truth is a little bit different. The most important, the most loved, and the most anticipated holiday of the year was New Year. For most families, New Year meant much more than food, decorations, or tradition. It was a transition point, a clear line between what had already happened and what they want to come. People felt that once the clock struck midnight, one chapter was closing and another chapter was opening. That feeling alone gave the holiday enormous meaning. And let me tell you about one very important symbol of New Year in my childhood in Ukraine and former Soviet Union, the New Year tree. Because in Soviet Union, we did not have Christmas the way it exists in many countries. Christmas was not celebrated officially. It was prohibited. It was not part of public life. But people needed a miracle. And this miracle became New Year. We had a tree, but it was not called a Christmas tree. It was New Year tree. It looks almost exactly the same. Green, tall, covered with lights, ornaments, glass balls, sometimes handmade decorations. But it was symbol of New Year. All around the world, people love Christmas trees, and we loved our New Year tree in exactly the same way. This tree was the center of the holiday. It usually stood in the living room, often for weeks. We decorated it together as family. Let me tell you one more important details for American viewers. We did not have Santa Claus in former Soviet Union also. Instead, we had Father Frost, Ded Moroz. He looked similar in some ways, a long red coat, white beard, but culturally he was different. Father Frost did not come down from the chimney. He came on New Year night from nowhere. Father Frost brought presents to children and adults, and those presents appeared under the New Year tree after midnight, when the New Year officially began. Often parents play the role of Father Frost, sometimes even dressing up, sometimes just quietly placing gifts under the tree while kids were waiting for the clock to strike 12. So while American children wait for Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, we waited for Father Frost on New Year night. Different names, different dates, but the same feeling of magic, surprise, and believe that something good is coming with the new year. So even without Christmas, we had something very similar in spirit. We had a tree, we had a Father Frost, we had gifts, we had family around tables, we had hope tied to the coming of New Year. But to truly understand why New Year carried such weight, it is important to remember what daily life during Soviet time was like. For most people, life was difficult and exhausting. People worked long hours, often doing physically and emotionally demanding jobs. Plus, much of their time was spent standing in lines, even for basic things like milk, bread, or sugar. There was a constant deficit of food, clothes, and everyday necessities. Simple things required effort, patience, and sometimes luck. By the end of the year, many people felt worn out, both physically and emotionally. So against this background, New Year became the holiday of hope, holiday for better life in coming New Year. It was not politically, not ideological, and not imposed from above. It belonged to people themselves. That is why so much importance was placed on this celebration. The best food that could be found or saved during the year was put on the table. The best wine was opened. The best clothes were worn. People wanted to enjoy food, beauty, and comfort, even if just for one night. There was a deep belief that the full table, beautiful clothes, and a joyful mood were not only part of the celebration, but a promise that next year could be better. Preparation for New Year usually started well in advance. People planned carefully, not because they wanted perfection, but because this night was treated with very special respect. Homes were cleaned good, sometimes almost symbolically, as if people were trying to remove not only dust, but also the heaviness of the past year. In reality, where many things were limited, New Year was the one occasion when people tried to create a feeling of abundance. Even those who lived very modestly made an effort to prepare a rich table and welcome guests properly, because there was a strong belief that how you meet the new year is how you will live it. The New Year's table itself was the heart of the celebration. It was large, often too large for the apartment, and filled with dishes that required time, patience, and care to make. Salads prepared for hours, cold appetizers made the day before, homemade pickles saved especially for this night, and sparkling wine waiting for midnight. This table was not about fashion or culinary trends. It was about effort, generosity, and the desire to give the best to the people sitting nearby. No matter how difficult the year had been, the table said, "Tonight we have enough." Now let me tell you about a little known tradition. When people finally sat down at the table on the evening on December 31st, there was a very meaningful tradition that many people followed. This was the moment to remember the old year, the year that was about to leave. Around the table, people speak honestly about what this year had brought into their lives. Each person could share what was good, what they were thankful for, what had been painful, and sometimes why they were ready for this year to end. Sometimes it was funny. Some people were grateful for the old year. Some people were thankful that this year is over. Even now, many years later, I can easily see my grandpa talking, my dad laughing. New Year was rarely a quiet or intimate dinner. It was a collective celebration. Families gathered, friends joined, neighbors came without invitation, and no one found this strange. Apartments were small at this time, but that only made people sit closer, talk more, and laugh louder. Someone always brought an extra dish, someone poured drinks, conversations overlapped, and stories moved from one topic to another without structure. For one night, the borders between family, friends, and neighbors disappeared, and everyone felt included. Television also played an important role. Certain programs, concerts, and movies were watched by millions of people at the same time, creating a feeling that the entire country was celebrating together. As midtime approached, conversations slowed, glasses were filled with champagne, and attention turned to the clock. This moment was taken very seriously. People stood up, focused, and prepared to welcome a new year properly. Oh, let me tell you another little known fact about this holiday. Back there was also a very strong belief connected to this night. People believed that the way you celebrate New Year, the way you enter it during the night from December 31st to January 1st, is how the year itself will be. If the celebration was joyful, generous, and warm, then the year ahead would be the same. If the night passed badly, with arguments, sadness, or disappointment, people worried that the coming year would reflect that. This is why people tried so hard to create a good mood, put the best dishes, the best food and drinks on the table, and wear the best clothes. They believed that they were shaping their future. Midnight was the emotional center of the celebration. People hugged each other health, peace, love, and happiness. In that moment, many disagreements from the past lost their importance because future felt more important than old problems. Of course. After midnight, the night did not end. People went outside despite the cold, watched fireworks, sang songs, dancing, or visited friends and neighbors. You can simply ring the neighbor door's bell. Neighbors would sit you at their table and would start feeding you again and again, ask you to try their dishes, drinks, desserts. Everyone was welcome at every home and table. The celebration usually stretched into morning, filled with long conversations, laughter, singing songs and dancing, eating and drinking again and again, and watching TV. What made New Year truly special was not only the celebration itself, but the reflection that came with it. At the end of the year, people naturally looked back. They thought about what they had accomplished, what they had survived, what they wanted to leave behind, and what they hoped for next. New Year became a personal mark of time, a moment to close one chapter and imagine another better chapter beginning. People always hope for a better life for them and especially for their kids and grandkids. And maybe that's why New Year became the most loved holiday in the former Soviet Union. Because in one single night, we had everything people were looking for. We had a New Year tree glowing with lights in the middle of the winter. We had a Father Frost who brought gifts. We had presents waiting for us after midnight. And most importantly, we had hope. Hope that the next year will be better. That life would be a little bit easier. That something would change for better. Even today, long after people have moved to different countries and start new life, this feeling remains. Traditions may change, but the meaning stays the same. New Year remains a moment to look back with honesty, look forward with hope, and believe that the next year might bring something worth waiting for. That was Dr. Helen, and until next week, please stay safe, healthy, and happy. Happy New Year and best wishes. Be safe. Bye now.